Aldo, what do you think the ASIS osteotomy gains you as far as access? And are you taking that? Are you taking that bone fragment medially?
Well, look, I think it allows me to start kind of going down the slide. I like to call it, go down the anterior column, go into the pelvis. I flip that tissue medial right, and then I start working. I do a lateral window kind of exposure, and then walk it down the anterior column to get to my pubis. Um, I think it's a low morbidity thing. I like bone on bone healing. I like to leave some of that attached. I've set them up now where they're angled. So if I have a shortening case, like John's mentioned before, you can slide the osteotomy down so you can still get bone to bone healing. You don't want a completely flat cut. Um, yeah, so I've been messing around with a double iliac osteotomy, ASIS and AIIS, because I had some of my younger patients, when I needed more access, and I was always doing a femoral rectus femoris tenotomy. So I've started doing a kind of this double osteotomy to leave the rectus attached. So here's a good
Yeah.
case. I got to get into the pelvis. Um, Extremely short. I'm gonna have to lengthen this patient. So this person's another infection case, bilateral primary hip done many years ago. So I'm going in. If you see the initial exposure, I have a picture there. Um, you're never going to get to this trunnion. That's the anterior coating of his femur, right? So that's where his ASIS is before I've decided to do any work. So I need to access the inner table to even get this dislocated. This is a cadaveric picture, but if you see here, this is what it looks like. So there's if you click ahead, that's where my ASIS osteotomy would be. That piece of bone right above it is the superior spine. And then you kind of angle it like a 45-degree or 60-degree angle. And then you don't want to extend it till you get into your dome, right? So this is a cadaveric dissection where we've put a cup in and we've already marked that. And then if we keep going, I'll mark it there, ASIS, AIS. And then in patients where you don't have a lot of shortening, you can actually get a bone-to-bone repair of that. So this is back to that case. There's that pseudoacetabulum that's formed up top in the inner table. That's where I did the osteotomy. You can see that right there. That's the piece of bone right there. And then I can then hook retractors underneath that. I use a Charlie. So that Charlie's hooked around the AIS. And then I can walk down the column. My sucker tip is pointing at an osteotomy. So there I went ahead and unroofed the socket from the inside. And then, yeah, I was able to dissociate the trunnion and the head ball from the
Say, because
inside.
that
And
that
then,
looked like contained defect. Like when you showed me that AP pelvis, I wasn't thinking the anterior column was going to be out. I thought this looked like just a giant superior contained defect. That picture there. So did you create like an anterior column hole then, so you could get to that,
yes,
and then okay,
yeah. So this was an infected case. I had to get a really good debridement. And I couldn't even access that thing was sucked in. He was up and in like that for years. This guy was a neglected PJI case. It took over a year and a half to get him on my schedule. Not the best social situation for him. So there was no way I was gonna even be able to get that cup and trunnion even out of the pelvis without doing this. So yeah, whenever I have to get inside to the yeah, I think recreating a column defect, that's a great indication for it. But for me, this is just getting the parts out. I had to get the parts out.
yeah, no, and
So
I've
this
done
is
that
one.
before where I've had these giant contained defects, and then just to get the implants out, I end up creating an anterior column or anterior wall defect just to get the parts out and then fix them later.
Yeah, and a case like this where he was short 5 centimeters, I think direct anterior is the way to go because, I can do an extensive release off the outer table. I think the abductor mass and the TFL will then slide down to a new position, and then if you angle these osteotomies right, you can slide them down a bit. Um, for this guy, getting him back 4 or 5 centimeters, you're probably not going to get bone to bone contact when you repair it. But I do have a picture coming up and an X-ray of. Well, that's what we did for this guy. You can actually put those plates on the inner table. If you have incredible access to it, so that's a good functional spacer for him. He's a pretty low demand guy. But then in my more functional patients where I've had to do it, I do fix it. Yeah, if you show that next picture, Um, you can see those screws where the ASIS and the AIIS are. You can get great bone to bone healing right there of the kind of double osteotomy. So this patient here that I showed, different patient obviously, but this guy is 42 years old.
Well,
So um, I would tenotomize the rectus on most of these patients, and I think they would have some persistent hip flexor strength. So I've started doing this, and I've been pretty happy with the results so far. There's another
do
picture,
you
I think.
always do double osteotomy, or is it possible? And I'm asking just because I've not done it and I don't know. But taking them both in one osteotomy, the ASIS and the AIIS, and just making it one large fragment, because you might be getting down into a little bit of the dome, but you're still your posterior column where we bear our weight and where we're loading our implants, it'd still be intact. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever tried taking one piece or not.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the next iteration of this, if I can do it. And obviously everyone's pelvis morphology, you look at it, like their angles are a little bit different in terms of you obviously don't want to compromise the bone that you need for reconstruction. I think that's number one key. And you mentioned that. So for right now, I mean, I've just been doing the double. But I think then if I could do it all as one big piece, that would probably be better and easier, truthfully. But I think that what that just goes to show is every year I'm doing more and more of these, and I think we're all kind of experimenting and pushing the envelope as to what is best for our patients. And so far, so good. I've had on the few patients that I've done this on, they haven't really given me the same complaints that I was getting before, in terms of some of that rectus or hip flexor weakness.
Yeah, I'll give a shameless plug out to one of your old fellows, James Baker. I just did a course with him, and he's. I'll take a little credit. He was my resident, but he was your fellow. But
Uh,
he he's doing some wild stuff down here in Louisville. He's on the radar.
Yeah, yeah. I think but again, it's about training that next generation of guys who are we are not set in our ways of like, hey, this is how we did it, and this is how people have always done it, and this is how we need to keep doing it. No, we haven't perfected anything, and I think that's part of the goal of all this is being collaborative. And I picked up a lot of stuff from everyone here that I've talked to about how I do hips and how I do revisions.